He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of StoryPower TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
Every story you choose to tell has a purpose. And every story that you choose to tell has an effect. And every story that you choose to tell, the key word in that statement is choose to tell. Choose. Key word, choose. Stories do not accidentally fall out of your mouth. Doesn't happen like that. Stories don't accidentally rattle around in your brain. It doesn't happen like that. They can be prompted, provoked, evoked. Those are different. But you still choose to tell them. Whether you tell them to yourself while you're driving down the road, or you tell them to yourself while you're trying to accomplish something, or you tell them to yourself because you think nobody else is listening, or you tell them to the world. The stories that you choose to tell, the stories that you choose to tell, oh, they can change everything. That's what I want to talk about today on Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And if you're a leader, again, at any level, leading at home, leading yourself, leading an organization or a multinational corporation, you know that the stories that you tell impact the people around you. When you tell a story about yourself, well, it impacts the people who work with you and for you. If you've ever, maybe you've been around one of those, maybe it's the water cooler, maybe it's the fire pit, maybe it's the tailgate party. And someone tells a story about their prowess on the sports field. How they caught that one-handed pass when they were in high school and it was the game-winning touchdown for the whole season, and that's how they won the state championship. And it was that one person, the one you're talking to, who caught the ball, who won the state championship. And if it hadn't been for them, there would have been no state championship and the whole town wouldn't have had a parade and blah, 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 blah. And it's that one person, and they can tell you the story of that victory. And sometimes what you'll find is that that one person, their hubris, their entire ego, their entire persona is built around that one event. We've seen this in movies, right? We've seen the caricature of the individual who lives their life like a Heisman Trophy. Everything they've ever accomplished is hinged around that one accomplishment, that one success. They've never really done anything else of significance in their life since that one event. And so every story that they tell about anything that they're doing, it goes back to that one major accomplishment. I won such and such an award when I was a kid. I've accomplished XYZ in my life. It does seem ironic that when you meet people who have such a long list of accomplishments with badges and awards and trophies and ribbons and designations and degrees, often you meet those people and they're very unassuming. Have you ever met a Navy SEAL after they've come off active duty? Yeah, you got to push them to get them to tell you that. Oh, trust me, these are not unintelligent grunts. These are not people who are just bullet sponges charging down the barrel of the enemy's weapon. Most Navy SEALs are academically excellent as well as being physically excellent and unbelievably disciplined. You don't reach that level by accident. It takes a lot of commitment and a lot of discipline to live in that world of special operations. But those are people who are very unassuming. They can blend in anywhere, and you wouldn't know it. Why? Because they don't live their life like a Heisman Trophy. Look at me. They're not trying to show off at every turn. They're not trying to impress you with everything. They're confident in who they are. And the stories they tell reveal that. If you do know a Navy SEAL, don't bother trying to get them to reveal all the secrets of the events that they learned while they were doing their job. Chances are it's above your pay grade, and they're not going to tell you anyway. But the stories they would tell would frighten you. The things they did encounter, what they actually did live through, is more than the average human can handle. What they had to do so that you could sleep safely in your bed at night and not be concerned about who might sneak in your door. The little tasks that they performed. The average bear doesn't want to know. Think back to Men in Black when they're standing there looking at all of the tabloid magazines. And the one character says to the other, what if these people, they're all running around like nothing is happening. What if these people knew that just right outside of our atmosphere was a battleship ready to blow us to smithereens? And he said, every day there's some kind of something about to destroy us all. It's our job to handle that problem, and their job not to know. It's better that they don't know. Okay, that's a narrative. That story about whether they should know or should not know, that's a narrative. The story about the Heisman Trophy winner, even if he didn't actually win the Heisman Trophy, just, accomplished one big feat of success, that's a narrative. It's a narrative that drives their life. The accomplishments unnoticed, the accomplishments unannounced of the Navy SEAL, that's a narrative. Everything that they've accomplished in life and never told anybody about, that's a narrative. You know what else is a narrative? My wife and I were watching The Amazing Race last night. And there's a couple on The Amazing Race, this particular episode we're watching. I don't even know how old it is, but on this particular episode, there's a couple. They call themselves motivational speakers. And there's a particular challenge in front of them where she has to carve a statue out of a block of plaster. And she strikes it 2 or 3 times and then just gets completely emotional. She says, this is not me. This is not what I do. I can't do this. I can't finish this. I'll take the 4-hour delay. I don't even want to try. I'm ready to give up. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a motivational speaker? Here she is on international television telling the world, I quit, I give up. I haven't really even tried. In fact, she hadn't even tapped the hammer against the chisel one time at the point that she said, I quit. She just looked at the obstacle in front of her and gave up. What she said, the story she chose to tell herself and the world in front of the cameras was, this is not me. I can't do this. I'll never succeed at this. Now, before we throw too many indictments on her, I want to ask you the honest question. If there were a webinar, I would ask you to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Feel free to leave it in the comments, but here's the real question for you. Have you ever looked at a task in front of you and said, I can't do this? I'm not competent. I don't have the education level. I don't have the qualifications. I'm not the kind of person that does this. If the answer is yes, then fear is your narrative. Oh, the stories may look different each time. Each level of challenge and change comes to you face forward, and the narrative begins to play again. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You're not pretty enough. You're not good looking enough. You don't have enough money in the bank. You'll never be able to secure that loan. You'll never be able to build that business. You'll never. And maybe, just maybe that narrative is in your life because someone told you you'll never. You can't. You're not worthy. You're not good enough. And if that's the case, then that's a narrative you need to unplug and stop listening to. In fact, the best way to get rid of that narrative is to counter that narrative. I saw this advice in a book Can't remember if it was Brendan Burchard's or it was Jack Canfield's. But in the book they said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go through all of your keepsakes. And on your bed at home, I want you to lay out every ribbon, every trophy, every award, every certificate, everything you've ever won in your life. I want you to lay them all out on the bed so you can see them at one time. And I want to ask you, are you still a failure? See, here's the truth. We don't win every time. We also don't lose every time. And the difference between this two is often just, did we give up? How close did you get to winning before you quit? You just don't know. But taking the delay, taking the fear, and allowing it to stop you from even trying, that's a narrative all by itself. Choice is story. Your choice rests in the story you're going to tell. Are you going to tell yourself the story, I can't do this. I'm not made for this. I'm not capable of this. I've never done this before. It's a choice. Will you choose to tell yourself a story of failure, or you choose to tell yourself a story of possible success, potential success? I think I can do this. I think I could pull that off. I think if I try hard enough, at least I'll learn something along the way. Whether I completely succeed at this or not, at least I will have tried. And I'll know for next time whether I could or not. See, leaders know that every employee, every team member at every level, even a motivational speaker, has the same struggle. Every one of us live just right on the edge of the imposter syndrome, where we look in the mirror and they go, well, that's really not me. I mean, I wish I could. I wish I was that good. I wish I was that smart. I wish I was that strong. I wish I was fully competent, but I'm not. I just don't feel like I am. And when we tell ourselves that story and we believe it, fear becomes the narrative. And that story, that set of stories, all the collection of the stories of the negative, they will eat you alive. You're going to have to find the place in your life where you can build stories that are more indicative of the future you want to live than the past you have lived. Did you hear what I just said? You're going to have to find a way to build stories that are indicative of the future that you want to live, not the past you have lived. I don't care if that's a grand amount of success or a grand amount of failure in your past. The stories you need to tell are the ones that lead you to a future that is a hopeful future, to a future that is a better future than the past that you've lived. And if you haven't found a way to do that, you need a coach to help with your stories. You need somebody who's going to ask you the tough questions. Why do you believe that to be true? What evidence do you have that it is true? Is it simply a story that you've heard over and over? Is it a misunderstanding about a perspective? Maybe it is true. Now the next question is, why is it true? And does it have to remain true? Did that series of events happen in your life for a reason that is undoable? Could we fix it? Do we have to repeat it, or could we unplug from that and move forward without it? There's a whole lot of struggle in the lives of people all over the world. And I have to be honest and say this. Sometimes the narrative of fear is given to you by somebody else. And sometimes it's on purpose. Their agenda is for you to fear. Because the more you're in fear, the less you take action. The more you're in fear, the less you succeed. The more you're in fear, the less you independently think. And trust me, there are people all over the world who benefit from your lack of action, your lack of thinking, your lack of moving forward. Your ability to be stuck right where you are is profitable for them. It is. Whether it's the medications that you're taking, the taxes that you're paying, the place that you're staying, the relationships that you're in, all of those things can be found to be profitable by somebody else. And if your fear keeps you from changing the place that you live, the relationships you're in, the money that you pay, the money that you earn, if that fear will control you to do that and it's profitable to them, the narrative of fear will be poured on you like hot cocoa, just constantly and in abundance. And you will think it's a good thing. I mean, who doesn't like hot cocoa? Especially if it comes with marshmallows on a cold day. It seems like the right thing at the right time, but eventually you get sick of it. And eventually you just get covered in it and you get sticky. That's the same with the narrative that drives fear into your life. It seems like the right thing up front. You really like it initially. But you get buried in it, and you'll eventually drown in it. Fear is a narrative. It may be a narrative that you're promulgating yourself. It may be a narrative that other people are feeding you. It may be, hold on to your hat for this one, it may be the narrative that you're driving into the people that you lead. The stories you choose to tell drive the narrative. Are you driving a narrative of fear into the people around you? Are you driving a narrative of fear into your own life? Is someone else driving a narrative of fear into your life and the life of people around you? StoryPower breaks that, because StoryPower says, I understand how sometimes it's a nuance. It's one set of words in an entire story. It's one perspective in an event that I've already lived through that allows me to look at that event and go, okay, maybe I perceived it wrong. Maybe I perceived it right and all the facts are there and all of the evidence is true. What happened was horrible. But I don't have to relive it like a Heisman moment for the rest of my life. I don't have to go back to that story again and again until it defines the who that I am. Because I get to choose the stories that I tell, I choose to tell stories that build me up, that build others up, that provide hope and positivity. The stories you choose to tell are the narrative of your life. They will also speak as the narrative into the life of people that you influence and that you lead. We've seen them. We've heard them. They're running on television and radio constantly about anti-bullying, the harsh words that we say to somebody else that they begin to absorb and eventually believe and then act on. And their entire life is directed by that single phrase, you're going to end up in jail one day. And when they find themselves in jail, they think it's prophetic. No, it's self-imposed. That's not a good story. It's not a good story. We should have enough fear of the narrative to at least be critical of it. Ask the question, what's behind this narrative, these stories that are being told to me? Are they encouraging? Are they empowering? Are they positive and hope-filled and driving me toward a better life? Or are these stories that are being told to me designed to tear me down, to hold me back, to prevent me from succeeding? You've always heard that history belongs to the victor. There's a lot of truth in that. If you read the history books, you'll see where people have manipulated history because the story they want to tell is a controlling, manipulative story. That's a narrative you should fear. Fear the narrative that tries to control your life. Fear the narrative that makes you believe something about you that's not true. If the narrative you're hearing right now challenges what you believe about yourself, you better put serious stock into evaluating that narrative. Who's it coming from? Who benefits from it being true? Who benefits from it being repeated? And then ask yourself in your own deep evaluation, is this narrative true of me? Or is that somebody else's problem? The stories you choose to tell are the narrative of your life. Fear the narrative that tries to control you, but don't let fear be the narrative that controls you. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.